The next day at school, another student comes to Haejin's class. The real troublemaker of the school, the third son of Jangsan clan, Kang Jen-nim. Last night, Chairman Lee had come to ask for Jen-nim's assistance. He wanted him to take care of Haejin for him. As they were talking, Yongjin Group's third daughter, Ra Hongmi, also comes there. She sees Haejin's picture and asks Jen-nim if his family was going to get involved in this. To which he replies that he was just curious to see him. And now in the present, Jen-nim rudely asks Haejin if he was the new slave. He drops the cigarette that he was smoking, and while Haejin was distracted by that, he attacks him at a high speed. But Haejin dodges the attack and kicks the desk at him, which he easily catches in midair. Jen-nim was impressed by his reflexes and told him that he didn't have any grudge against him. He was just fulfilling someone's request. He attacks Haejin again and they start fighting in the class. Even the teachers were powerless and couldn't stop them. The whole class was in chaos and all the other students were terrified. Jen-nim was pushing him back, while Haejin was just blocking his attack. At another place, the NIS team leader and the girl NIS member were researching. The girl asks him why they need Haejin for their plan, and how he was gonna save his sister through him. He told her that they needed more information on the other school, and for that, he needed to persuade Jen-nim. At the school, their fight was still going on. We come to know that Haejin had already anticipated his encounter with Jen-nim, and says to himself that dealing with him quietly wasn't an option anymore. Outside the class, Hongmi was watching the fight and was pissed at Jen-nim for fighting again. She notices that Haejin was better than she had originally thought. Even if Jen-min looks like a bully, he was raised with specialized education in his family, and as soon as she says that Jen-nim was a monster, Haejin punches him so hard that he gets thrown out through the window, breaking the glass. Hongmi was shocked to see him unconscious. The NIS team leader says that Jen-nim was only the start. It was going to go a lot harder from there. The ones who were looking for an opportunity to aim for Park Cheong-sa's area, there was no way that those gangs would sit still. The Namsan clan that was affiliated with Park Cheong-soo, the previous boss, will do the same too. Now that the boss, Cheong-soo, was gone, there was going to be a bloodbath in that area. And this all will be centered around this guy. As Haejin was going to sit in the class, Jen-min gets up again, saying he hadn't had this much fun for a long time. As he was about to attack him again, Hongmi stops him from fighting. She apologizes to everyone and drags him out of the class. She was baffled to see Haejin go up against Jen-nim and not get pushed back. And now she was interested in this mess too. After school, Jen-nim kept messaging Haejin over and over again, challenging him to fight him, threatening to kill him, and bad-mouthing him. Haejin was getting annoyed by this. Defectors who have no family in the South either go to alternative schooling or end up in group homes, and Haejin was in a group house. During dinner, Jen-nim kept messaging him, and after many messages, he finally replies to him, giving him a location to come to. Haejin says to himself that now it was time to take over this territory. Jen-nim knows that the last time they fought, he wasn't serious, and now it was about his pride. He arrives at the location and shouts his name, but what he saw shocked him. There were guys from other gangs who were mistaking him for Haejin. Haejin had beaten up this gang's members and given them the location of this place. Jen-nim tries to explain, but they attack him before he could clarify. Meanwhile, Haejin himself was at their main base. It was his plan to split them, and while they are distracted, he would go for the head. But the head anticipated this would happen and had most of his goons stay behind. Haejin didn't expect the plan to go this smoothly either, and like always, if the plan doesn't go as planned, use your fist. He was beating them brutally one by one. The head was wondering what was going on, why all his men were getting beaten up by that guy. While Haejin was distracted fighting other members, the head comes from behind and throws washing powder in his eyes, blocking his eyesight, and attacks him. On the other hand, Jen-nim was fighting the rest of the gang members and he was almost out of breath. He had taken down a few of those goons but was already at his limit. He curses Haejin for using him as a scapegoat, but he was not giving up, so one of the thugs attacks him. Jen-min knew he couldn't dodge that as his legs were shaking when someone throws a bat at the guy. It was Jeng Taiju from the Renegade organization, and with him was his assistant. The thugs asked them who were they and asked Jen-min if they were with him, but he didn't know them either. His assistant told them that he was the real owner of this territory. Now the thugs don't care and attack everyone there. On the other hand, after throwing washing powder in his eye, the head of the gang starts beating him, throwing him out through the window. After that, he starts beating him with chair. He knows if he manages to somehow get up, he would be dead. So he needed to kill Haejin before that. As he was continuously beating him, Haejin grabs the chair. He was pissed now and said to him that he was dead meat now. Onto the batting cage, the guy, Taiju, slams one of the goons straight to the floor, while the other members charge toward him as well. He was fighting using some special techniques. His attacks were polished and accurate, not wild. This indicates that he was professionally trained as well, just like Haejin. Jennim was stunned and wondered where all these monsters were coming from. He was leaving the area when Taiju stops him and asks him where the head of the gang was. Jennim tries to get out of that situation by denying to know anything when he attacks him, saying he was not messing around. Jennim knew he was screwed big time. At the hospital where Byeok's mom was admitted, she sees a man sitting next to her mom. When she asks him who he was, he replies that he was her father. Byeok was stunned and didn't believe him. On the other side, after getting beaten up by Haejin, the head's attitude towards him completely changes. He started calling him Hyungdim and pledges his undying loyalty to him. They were also at the batting cage where the rest of his men were. He was planning to ambush Haejin when he reunite with his remaining members and take his revenge on him. But when he arrives there, his plan is completely shattered, seeing all his men on the ground. Everyone else was laying injured on the ground while Jennim was getting beaten up by Taiju. One of the thugs calls the head boss, and now Taiju knew he was the head. Taiju told him to hand over the laundromat to him and attacks him. But Haejin intervenes, saying the laundromat was now his, and attacks him back. But Taiju grabs his hand, shocking Haejin, and tackles him onto the ground. At the hospital, Park Chang-soo was admitted to the hospital because he tried to take his own life to save his son's life from his leader. They had threatened to kill him and his son if he ratted on them. The NIS team leader told him that he would reveal the false news to the media of him betraying his people unless he gives him the information on the Namsan gang. He told the team leader about his successor, Jeng Taiju. On the other side, Taiju slams Haejin to the ground, but he somehow avoids the impact. Taiju was an elite athlete who was the muscle of their gang. He told the team leader that once he took down a rival group all alone. And the crazy part was, everyone who got beaten by him all end up with concussions or broken ribs. To sum it all up, once he catches someone, he's dead meat. Taiju was overpowering him in the fight, and now even Haejin labels him as dangerous. Haejin frees himself from his grab and manages to lock him in a chokehold. Haejin told him to give up, as getting out of that lock was almost impossible. Taiju recognizes his talent, saying he was real fun. He slams his foot onto the ground and lifted his opponent while in a chokehold, and breaks himself free from his hold. Now they were both pumped up for their fight, and as they were about to attack each other when the head shouts that the territory's gang was coming in droves. Not the whole place was filled with local gang members. After Park Chang-soo was arrested, these three gangs joined hands because they didn't want to work under the head anymore. They were also there to take control of the laundromat from the head. They attack the head, but he hides behind Haejin and told them that he was the boss now. But they don't believe him. Haejin saves him and confirms that he was really the owner of the laundromat now. Everyone now makes him the target. Taijuro's assistant tasks him if they should hide and fish them out later, but he wanted to take all of them out because he had to fight them anyway. Due to the situation, Jennim also had to get involved in the fight. And now these three were up against the whole three gangs. At the hospital, when the NIS officers were leaving, they see Byeok running away. When he see the man she was running from, he was completely baffled, saying how he was still alive. Onto the battle area, they were still fighting those gangs. Although they were defeating them one by one, their number was just way too much. The head also helps Haejin here and there. Some thugs attack him from behind, but Haejin saves him. Seeing him fight like that, Jennim calls him a monster. He was fighting using some special moves as well and was overwhelming them. He brags about his moves to Haejin when he sees Taiju defeating a bunch of them using weird fighting techniques. Jennim was now just speechless. The gang leaders didn't understand what was going on either. How could just the three of them overpower three whole gangs? But they had still hoped that they would hit their limit soon, and that's exactly what happened. Against their sheer numbers, they started to get out of breath. Jennim blames Haejin for all this, to which he replies that he would gladly take a hit from him after this was done. Jennim suggests he forget about their matter and find a measure against this situation. And that's when his measures arrive. The thugs at the back started to scream and get beaten. It was none other than Hongmi, who was there with his bodyguards. One of them tries to get close to her when a bodyguard slams him onto the ground, and before the rest of them could make any move, the other bodyguards start beating them one by one. Their boss didn't know who they were when the other boss told him that she was the third child of the Yongjin group. He was terrified to know who she was and wondered what she was doing there. The captain of those bodyguards orders them to stop. Nim asks her what she was doing there. She slaps and told him that it was Haejin who called her. He knew if something were to happen to him, she would definitely come to rescue him, and that was the reason he baited him into this mess. Although there were some excess variables, all of this was according to Haejin's plan. He wanted the approval to oversee this territory from the real owner of Gusan, and this was the way how Yongjin Group gives the approval to someone strong. This was how Park Chang-soo also got his position, by fighting for it. Putting territory on the line through fist fights, that's how they determine the strong. Hongmi was annoyed seeing everyone dancing like a fool on the palm of his hand, except for Taiju. He goes over to her to set things straight about him being the new owner of the territory. But Hongmi doesn't agree to that because he had connections with Park Chang-soo. The other thugs don't agree to that either. Instead, they prefer Haejin as their new boss over Taiju. Haejin had successfully manipulated those guys into making him the new owner of the laundromat. He slams one of the goons to the ground. She realizes he was strong. He was on the same level as Haejin. When she doesn't agree with him, he decided to use force on her. The bodyguards come in the way to protect her, but in an instant, he took down all of them in one strike, except the captain. As he was about to attack the captain, his assistant stops him. Apparently, the headquarters found out that the Yongjin group was there, and they order them to come back. He starts leaving without a fight when the bodyguards get up and try to stop him. The captain himself beats them, telling them to know some shame. On the other hand, the team leader and the NIS girl were discussing the plan that Haejin had made to take over this territory. The girl says that she was worried about Haejin. There's one person who would do anything in the name of the Yongjin group. She was talking about the captain. Nim asks Hongmi if it was a bit over the top, getting the captain involved in this. To which she replies that Haejin needs to know that there was bigger fish. Haejin also could see he was monstrously strong, so he makes a plan with the remaining thugs to take him down first. After that, they could split the territory. They all agreed to the plan. Haejin charges in first and attacks him, which he easily avoids. He mocks Haejin's plan to take him down and strikes back, but Haejin manages to block his attack. The captain was impressed by him. Haejin grabs him by shirt and they engage in an intense close combat fight. Haejin reminds him that he was not alone and grabs him so that he couldn't move. The remaining thugs attack him and Haejin lets him go. The captain beats them up, but while he was distracted by them, Haejin comes from behind and locks him into a cloth grab. The captain couldn't break free of that and passed out. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, and with that, there was no more resistance now. After she yielded and agreed to his terms, he concedes his role of overseeing that territory to Sun Jae-tak, the head of the previous gang. They were shocked to hear that. He wasn't aiming to rule over this territory to begin with, he just wanted to use those goons whenever he wanted. And also he asked them to transfer Sun Jae-tak to their school. Surprisingly, they were the same age. He mistakes Byok for his girlfriend. Nim and Hongmi also come there and Nim challenges him to a fight. Hongmi starts beating him. Byok sees that Haejin had new friends now. Hongmi notices her and starts flirting with her, saying she was her type. She was he to call in the favor she did on him last night and asks him to work for her for a day. He denies it, saying he had an appointment with someone important. Later that evening, he meets Ma Yam-tong from the Bukju gang and the boss of the meat distribution department. He was also a spy just like Haejin, but he was no longer working for North. Ma Yam assumes that Haejin wanted to prove his worth to them too, by giving them Gusan and Yongjin group. Haejin goes along with his assumptions, saying he wanted a good carrier for him and his sister in the North. They join hands, but Mu-yum says they needed to be honest to each other and shows him the proof that he had given to the NIS agent. He already knew that Haejin was planning to screw him, but he come here anyway, because he wanted to catch him and offer him to the Bukju gang to solidify his position in it. And he had already prepared for all this. And with that, the fight begins. They were using knives as if they were trying to kill him. But, after just a few moments, he had defeated all three of them. And now it was Ma Yom's turn to fight. At a park, Byeok meets her dad. It had been 10 years since he was gone and apologized to her, but she replies that he shouldn't apologize to her as they had no relation anymore. Her dad gives her his number if she ever feels like talking and leaves after that. On the other hand, the fight between Haejin and Mayim was still going on. Although Mayim was better than the others, but he still was no match for Haejin. After he defeated Mayim, he offers him a deal. He would get him a deal with Nis, so he could keep all his money and get witness protection. In exchange, he asks him to assign him as a deputy, so he could take over the business after he was gone. Of course, he wasn't telling him the real truth behind all this, and if he doesn't agree to that, he would kill him right there. He assures him saying he should keep the evidence and use it against him if he were to betray him. The evidence was fake that he had intentionally sent out. Mayim agrees to the terms and they make the deal, and as his boss, he assigned him to his first mission. He shows him a picture of Byeok's father and ordered him to kill him. Mayim told him that the man in the picture was a former NIS agent as well as a former HID. Haejin was shocked to hear that, but he assures him saying that even South didn't want him. He also told him that his daughter goes to the same school as he does. The next day at school, Haejin was spacing out while staring at Byeok. The other students were surprised to see all the elites eating together. Jennim asks Haejin why was in a gloomy mood. Haejin doesn't reply to him and takes his food instead, and he starts shouting at him. Meanwhile, Hongmi was busy flirting with Byeok. Byeok was wondering why she was like that to her. She didn't hate it, but it was embarrassing for her. Haejin decides that no matter who his enemy was, he would eliminate them for sure, even if that guy was Byeok's father. The team leader goes to meet the deputy chief and asks him why he didn't tell him about Ju-young's arrival. He was talking about Byeok's father. He told him that the North wants to have a summit. Even the government seemed to backing it, and the cost was Ju-young, who just came back to the south. The chief told him not to get too hasty because they were not going to sacrifice someone who offered his life to their country. In the past, the deputy chief was the one who sent him away and declared him dead, and he was the one who was compensating his family all this time. Outside the city area, in the mountains, Ju-young was camping alone, thinking about how foolish he was to imagine being in a normal family environment again. He decides that it might be best for him to disappear again when someone attacks him from behind. He senses him and dodges his attack, and attacks the guy with the firewood, killing him in an instant. Haejin comes there with the new gang he had joined. Ju-young asks him if the North sent him, to which he replies in affirmative and says that he needed to die. Ju-young tries to escape and the gang members follow him. He gets inside his tent, and his tent was full of traps that get rid of many of them. He had the survival instinct of an animal after being in the mountains for too long. He was prepared for any kind of ambush and was pushing them back using his primary weapons. When he was out of arrows, they attack him blindly, but they weren't aware of the other traps that he had laid. And just like that, in less than 5 minutes, he took down each one of them except Haejin. Ju-young takes out his gun and asks Haejin if he was their boss. Haejin compliments him on being prepared for something like that. On the other hand, Byeok comes to Jennim's house to deliver his food. They were surprised to see each other. Jennim doesn't even fully remember his name and offers her a piece of chicken. She says she was fine and leaves after that. Back to the fights, Haejin was trying to dodge his bullets while Ju-young kept shooting at him continuously. When he was reloading his gun, Haejin attacks him with a rod, which he barely dodges. And while he was distracted by the rod, Haejin attacks him and he falls to the ground. But while falling, Ju-young manages to reload his gun and points it at him. But Haejin grabs his gun and kicks him into the other tent. But he gets up almost immediately and attacks Haejin, which he dodges but couldn't dodge his next kick. Haejin tries to shoot him with the gun but he avoids that as well and throws him and along with himself onto a sharp rod wall. Haejin knew he couldn't change his trajectory mid-air, so he shoots the LPG gas tank near it and gets thrown away by the thrust of the blast. And that's how he managed to survive a near-death situation. After all that, Haejin finally manages to put his gun on the back of his head, and now he had nowhere to run. While returning to her apartment, Byeok was thinking how rich Jennim was and wondered if her dad was with her. Would her life have been different? She was thinking all of this when a car crashes into her. While Ju-young was being held at gunpoint, his daughter was being kidnapped by the same gang members. She asks for her dad's help, but little did she know that Haejin had already killed her father. While they were loading her into the car, Jennim comes there because she had mismatched his order. When he sees them kidnapping her, he gets furious and throws his scooter at them and starts beating them brutally. After beating them up for a few moments, he tries to wake her up and asks her who were these people, but she was out cold. Suddenly another car comes there that drives over Jennim as well. Now they load both of them into the car. On the other side, they burn the tents after killing him to erase any evidence. Although he feels bad for Bioke, but he says to himself that there was no other way. One of his gang members gets a call from the No2 of their gang, who told him that his daughter was also captured. Hearing this, Heijin was stunned. They decide to send her off too. He confirms the news of her kidnapping with the gang member and was in disbelief. He was terrified for Bioke and couldn't believe that she got kidnapped. Bioke wakes up in shock and sees Jengmin in front of her, who asks her to calm down. He told him everything that had happened because she was out all along. He tries to free their hands first and uses the sharp metal to free his hand, while Bioke easily frees herself without much effort, as she had learned how to free herself in those kinds of situations when she was young. Now the only problem was the door. She notices something and Jengmin says that they still had a chance to get out of there. At another place, while Hongmi was taking a bath, she gets the message about Jengmin getting abducted. She calls the captain and orders him to summon everyone. After finishing his first mission, Heijin gets back to the main base. Even though he had killed her father, he was not gonna let anything happen to Bioke. He meets the No2 of the Mayam gang, Kim Hyung Tai. Heijin asks him where the boss was, to which he replies that their boss was the most greediest and hypocritical person ever. The other gang members start surrounding him, and he asks if it was a betrayal, to which he replies that it was the plan from the start. Heijin punches him with all his strength, and the No2 falls to the ground in just one strike. The other gang members were shocked to see that. Heijin told them that if they plan on betraying him, he would do the same to them as well. We see that the Gusen gang's head also comes there with all his men, and the all-out battle between the two elite gangs begins.